My screen as well. Please let me know if you do not see my screen share. I'm gonna get that pulled up here. And then hopefully we get that looking okay. All right. And turn off the waiting room. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into everything here today. Mike, I hope you can hear me okay too. Feel free. Anyone on here today, let me turn the waiting room off. So we can let others join as they come in. Okay. Okay, today feel free to unmute yourself, ask any questions. You can throw questions in the chat as well. I'll be looking for questions on our YouTube live as well as the Facebook live as well, so we can answer those along the way. I want today to be interactive, to be helpful for you. We do live webinars every week, so every Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and jump into today's topic, which is Credit Score Pro AI, transform your credit score with artificial intelligence. So today it is just me. My name is Ivory Becker, co-founder of Credit Score Pro AI. Normally, the other co-founder, Alicia, is here with us, but unfortunately she's out sick today. So I will be covering today's topic. We co-founded Credit Score Pro AI primarily from necessity. We've both been within the credit space for a very, very long time. At this point, what we've realized is there's a lot of conflicting information out there. There's a lack of financial literacy, a lack of credit education. Even if you're someone who is an expert within the lending space or the banking space, there's just not a lot of resources out there when it comes to credit. So my background primarily has been in regulatory compliance before I entered the credit space, as well as financial planning and everywhere in between. Okay, so our mission at Credit Score Pro is really to revolutionize financial education. We want to make financial literacy accessible. We want to make credit accessible as well. And we want to provide essentially access to resources all in one platform that are currently either hard to access, impossible to access, or broken up into a lot of different places. So before we dive into really breaking down the AI, looking at the AI, I wanted to start with talking about financial literacy. So financial literacy is knowing the skills and behaviors needed to make informed decisions when it comes to money. So in other words, you're able to make an educated decision when you're trying to make a financial decision, right? Someone who can weigh the pros and cons and know the potential outcomes and consequences of the decisions that they're making financially. So we're going to start with a little doom and gloom, the financial literacy crisis, and it is a growing problem here in the US, unfortunately. So we're going to start by looking at some of the statistics and then really dive deeper into the AI and how the AI can solve some of these problems. So 73% of American adults rank their finances as their primary stressor. That percentage has been consistently increasing, unfortunately, year after year. And what's even crazier is those in the younger generation, so Gen Z and millennials, are ranking 82% and 81% saying finances are at least somewhat stressful. That being said, we're seeing those gaps widening also between the generations, and we'll look a little bit at that in another slide here. So 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. And 53% of Americans don't have an emergency fund. When we start to look at income differences, those with household income below 50,000, we're seeing 74% of those not having any emergency fund. And then 60% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency with cash and savings. And if we start to look at millennials, only 16% understand basic financial principles. So there's a very strong need for financial literacy. It's very apparent. 15% of adults have lost over $10,000 in the last year just due to a lack of financial literacy. That's getting the wrong types of predatory loans, paying more than they should for debt because of not understanding the options that are available. And we'd like to bridge that gap. And 25% of American adults don't have anyone to ask for trusted financial guidance. I think this really hits home because if you are someone who is looking for financial help, often we think of places like going to a financial planner. But a financial planner is very focused on building wealth. They're not necessarily there to help with those day-to-day financial questions and financial concerns. They're really more heavily focused on how do you invest, how do you use insurances, but not necessarily the basics of bridging that gap from going from paycheck to paycheck to building wealth. What does that in between look like, and how do you get to that wealth building stage? So I thought it'd be fun to break down financial literacy by generation. So we can see between the baby boomers and the Gen Z, a drop of 23% in financial literacy rates. So that's just really understanding the basics of finances and being able to make those informed decisions. Feel free to interject too if you'd like. Now, if we look at things industry specific, most people have a desire of owning a home at some point. And what we find is that out of just over 69,000 people who inquire about getting a mortgage to buy a home, only 35% of those individuals actually end up going through the process in its entirety. That's what this chart is really looking at. And the major issue preventing them from qualifying or having them drop out of this pipeline, if you will, is credit history and debt to income issues, right? So if you have a lower credit score, you tend to pay more for the debt that you do have. And that's what debt to income is really looking at. What are your monthly payment obligations as compared to the income that you have coming in? So those with a lower credit score or those with credit history issues are paying more when they borrow. And unfortunately, it's preventing transition into homeownership. So the want to learn for financial literacy is there. And what do I mean by that? In surveys, we saw that 41% of people said they had to teach themselves about personal finance. That's a pretty large statistic. And 63% of American adults think that personal financial education should be taught in schools, but there's only 20 states that require high schools to teach anything about financial literacy. And even with that, half of young individuals between ages of 15 and 18 failed financial literacy quizzes on just basic financial literacy. And 77% of people surveyed want politicians to push for financial literacy education in schools. Okay, so there's a lot of statistics, a lot of facts. So what does that all mean, right? We have a big problem here in the United States where you're living in the environment today. Everything costs more, higher inflation. It's harder to qualify for homes. Homes cost more. We have people who want to have a stronger knowledge base when it comes to finance, but don't necessarily have the resources available. And unfortunately, our school systems are not educating us when it comes to finance. So our solution is utilizing the power of AI. we hear about it every single day, right? You turn on your computer, you watch TV, and we're inundated with the advances in AI. So what we aimed to do with the creation of Credit Score Pro is begin to utilize AI to fill in the gap and solve all of these financial literacy problems that I just had mentioned from those statistics. So the whole idea is to empower financial freedom for everyone, right? Utilizing AI to really take the lack of understanding of how credit works and solve that mystery, right? Give all of those answers. Because the foundation of improving your financial future really starts with that basic of credit. Credit creates opportunity for you. Without having credit, you are very limited in how you can move up in the world. Credit impacts your ability to qualify for cell phone coverage, cell phone plans, as crazy as that is. It impacts your ability to turn on utilities. If you have a low credit score or no credit score, they may require additional deposits. Basically, just costs you more money to have low credit or no credit. It impacts things like your car insurance, your renter's insurance, your homeowner's insurance, your ability to qualify and find housing, whether you're trying to rent or you're trying to buy a house. And then your ability to transition from hardship. So, for example, let's say you qualify for a government assistance program. I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to buy a house and you are able to get qualification for down payment assistance, where they're going to help you with putting money down to qualify you to buy. You have to meet that minimum credit score requirement in order to be able to take advantage of those programs, right? So you may have access to programs, but you may have that limitation or that barrier if your credit score is not high enough or you don't have a credit score. So credit can break boundaries. Your income doesn't impact your credit score. I think that's a common misconception. So it doesn't matter if you make $50,000 a year or $500,000 a year. Both individuals are capable of having a perfect credit score regardless of their income level. Your demographics don't impact your credit score as well. So your place of employment, your age, your gender, all of those personal factors don't actually influence that credit score that you see. So AI is meant to bridge these gaps. Lack of the education and finance, lack of understanding how credit works or how to fix and improve, and then also maintain the strong credit scores. And another big problem is the inability to qualify for the different financing needs. There are all sorts of horrible predatory loans out there. I have seen loans at 400% interest rate. How do you expect yourself to ever dig out of a hole when you're paying 400% on a loan, even for $500? It's going to take you forever to pay that off. So we also want to solve that inability to move up and make change that doesn't just impact you directly, but impacts your children and future generations. So what can the AI do in Credit Score Pro? And we'll look at exactly how it functions here next, but I wanted to summarize the features that it has available. So the first thing is an AI-driven credit analysis. So it's going to analyze the report and tell you, here's what's hurting your score. Here's why you're not at that 800, that 850, or whatever your credit score goal is. Even the 750, right? Here's what's hurting and pulling your score down, and then tells you, here's exactly how you fix it. It has customized financial literacy modules. So essentially, we want to bridge those gaps. People have a desire to understand their finances and understand how things work. We just need to give the tools and the resources. Credit monitoring. If you want to improve your credit, if you want to understand credit, you have to know where you are right now. And being able to watch what's driving your score up and down, those behaviors and those actions are changing your scores over time. Debt management tools. Right now, we're seeing a large increase in consumer debt, which really is looking at things like credit card debt, right? It's a struggle to get by right now for many, many people. And because we're seeing that increase in credit card debt, we're also seeing an increase in people wanting to know, well, how do I manage it? How do I pay it down? And what type of strategies should I be implementing? So having that ability to know what the plan is and then being able to take action and then see that progress. And then lastly, credit building strategies. let's say you have no credit score or you've damaged your credit, what are the ways that you can start to add good information to your credit report to start improving your scores? And what makes the most sense based on what you already have on your credit report? So, sounds great, but how does it work? So before we dive into exactly how it works, I want to give an example of a real life scenario that many people have gone through, especially with the last few years with COVID, with inflation, with everything we've all been inundated and experienced over the last several years. So let's say you've been beat down financially, you went through a hardship, maybe loss of income. A common thing we've seen lately would be job loss or a medical issue. Divorce often is another negative impact to credit. So you name it, we've all been through some sort of a hardship. So now you find yourself in the situation where you went from a decent credit score, maybe you're in the 700s or maybe even the high sevens or low eights, and your scores drop down now to the 400s or 500s. And it drops really fast. It feels harder to improve your score, to see that score jump up, but it feels really easy for it to drop. And it starts just with one late payment to your credit card. And then, of course, they're adding the late fees. And then all of a sudden your next bill is due. And then the same thing starts happening with your utility bills and your other bills. And now you only have so much money month to month, and it's limited from where you were before. And you have to decide, where's the money going to go, right? Likely it's going to go to a couple of things. One, keeping a roof over your head, and two, food, right? Food for yourself, maybe for your children. And now you're extremely stressed. The bill collectors are calling and you're just overwhelmed. And before you know it, you're in a hole so deep and you feel like you can't climb out of it. Your credit cards are charged off from lack of payment. Your car was repossessed. Your utility bills went unpaid, and so did your cell phone. And then when all hope seems lost, you find a glimmer of hope because your finances are starting to improve. Maybe you got a new job, the hardship is over for whatever reason. And now it takes time for you to rebuild and to catch up on your bills, but you're feeling okay. The trouble is, and like for many people who've been through this situation, your credit is now shot. You have a credit report full of charged off accounts, unpaid balances. You owe $5,000 still on that car repossession because when they auctioned it off, it didn't satisfy your full loan amount. And now you have collections for things like that unpaid electricity bill, and then your cell phone bill, maybe your gym membership, maybe even some medical bills you couldn't afford. And it seems like you keep getting notified of new collections popping up every few months from those unpaid credit cards because they sold those balances to a third-party collector. And just when you thought you were out of the hardship, you feel just slapped in the face with more and more negative information, more stressors, and it's hard to figure out how to manage it. So who do you turn to? You often have questions like this. What should I pay? And the internet's telling you conflicting things like you should pay a collection account or you shouldn't pay a collection account. Don't pay a charge-off account or do pay a charge-off account. How do you raise your credit score if the negative information stays on your credit report for 7 years? And how should you rebuild credit if everybody's denying you for new credit? And how do you start working towards buying a new car if you have a repossession on your credit report? You need a car to get from A to B. And how do you plan on buying a house someday if all of this negative information is going to follow you for 7 years? And then how are you going to prevent it from happening again? These are the common questions that we were seeing. Now, there is opportunity and there is hope. And here's where it starts. So 70% of credit reports have errors. Why does this matter to you? So when it comes to your consumer rights, you have the right to an accurate credit report. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act gives you that right. That is the regulation that gives you, the consumer, the right to accurate reporting. And that's important because, again, 70% of the reports have errors. So, said differently, it's not necessarily whether you were past due on that credit card or whether you do owe the debt. It's whether the compliance is there, whether the laws and the regulations were followed on the credit report. So we're going to look at what I mean by that. So when we talk about negative information on the credit report, we're looking for things like maybe on one credit bureau, because you have 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Maybe Equifax is reporting that you were late in August 2020, but you look on Experian and TransUnion and they're reporting you 30 days late in September 2020, not August. That's inconsistent, right? It's not accurate for one bureau to report a different month than the other 2 bureaus. We also may see things like the wrong balance is showing. Maybe that charged off credit card is showing a balance of $370 on one credit bureau, like we see here, and $160 on a different credit bureau. I know these are different accounts, but run with my example. So there's all sorts of issues that may exist on the credit report. Maybe the same account showing up twice. Maybe a collection account that was sold to a new collection agency got re-aged, meaning maybe they tried to reset that timer and that collection's actually over 7 years old and shouldn't still be impacting you. The list is actually very, very long of the errors that could be on your credit report. And the rule of thumb is really looking for anything that's inaccurate, pretty obvious, we talked about that. Inconsistent, right? Differences across the 3 bureaus. Obsolete. That's just saying the age. It's too old to be reporting. So what currently exists in the world of credit repair, or whether that's you fixing your own credit, you hiring a credit repair company, working with credit counseling, is using our eyeballs as humans to read the credit report, right? You're looking and doing exactly what you see on the screen, circling, finding things that just don't match, that don't make sense. But with AI, we can do it better. And that's really the point here. So AI can instantly analyze a raw data credit file. And hold on to that point, raw data credit file. We're going to look at what that means. And it takes seconds. So it's looking at hundreds of pages of code and running it through thousands and thousands of algorithms to identify errors, right? Because again, it's your right to have accurate reporting. It's also your right to dispute any errors on your credit report. So what is a raw data credit file? So on the right side of the screen here, all these numbers and letters, this is an example of the raw data that's on the back end based on what you would see here on the left-hand side of things. So when you get your credit report from wherever, Credit Karma, from your mortgage lender, from your credit card app with Chase, whoever it is, they're taking that raw data and showing you something pretty, right? Showing you something that you're able to understand. So the raw data has so much more information than what they make readily available for you to view. And this means when the AI is doing the analysis on the back end, it gets to go through so much more information than what you get to see with your eyes. The importance is, we talked about opportunity. This creates much, much more opportunity for finding errors that you wouldn't otherwise see. This means there's more reasons, more opportunities for creating new disputes. And the importance of understanding a dispute is it's essentially saying, credit bureau, I identified this error on my credit report. You either need to fix this, delete the account, or delete the negative information from my credit file because you failed to maintain the requirements of an accurate credit report. Okay, so that's very important because what happens when negative information is removed from the credit report? Hopefully it's obvious. Your score goes up. Okay, so the AI with Credit Score Pro is essentially going to analyze your report. It's going to show you every single account on your credit report, and it's going to say these accounts are negative, these accounts are positive. What do you want to do? And from here, you can say, well, I would like you to use all the errors you found on the negative accounts and create a dispute. And that's exactly what you can do. You select the accounts that you'd like to dispute. And then from there, AI is going to utilize their suggested dispute. And you can choose to write your own dispute if you'd like. That's completely up to you. We always suggest going with what AI comes up with because the AI works really well. One great thing about the AI is for every single user that's ever made a dispute in Credit Score Pro, it's determining what are the most successful disputes, what are the least successful disputes, how can we adjust how we're disputing over time. So it's a full machine learning tool. So it just gets better and better and better the more and more people we've had use Credit Score Pro. So it creates your dispute. And from there, you have the opportunity to now, if you want, print and send your disputes to the credit bureaus. Or you can use our integration with MailDash and have them mail the disputes for you. Anyone have a question on why we are mailing the disputes? I'm going to say somebody out there does. The reason we want to mail the disputes is because you have more protections as a consumer. It's down to how do we protect the most rights that you have as a consumer, and that's still by sending things through the mail. So we do send you the disputes in your email too. You're welcome to email the credit bureaus directly. We just will always recommend mailing it, whether that's yourself printing it or using the integration and having the third-party mail service send the disputes for you. We want you to have the highest likelihood of getting things off of your credit report so you can see score improvement. So what about everything else impacting your credit score? This is really important. So if you see this chart here, you'll see that part of your credit score is payment history. So that's 35% of your score. So those negative accounts from those missed payments, those repossessions, those charge-offs, those are all pulling your credit score down, right? They're making your credit score lower. But if we're talking about, well, how do I improve my credit score to create more financial opportunity for myself? That's going to mean that you want to focus on these other factors too. And one of the problems within what exists right now in the credit improvement industry or credit repair industry is it's very narrowly focused on just removing negative accounts. It's an important part of the process. The AI is exceptional at doing it, but why would we only want to address 35% of your credit score? Why wouldn't we want to address 100% of your score? Right? It makes sense. So the AI is going to look at your credit report and say, okay, we're addressing the negative history through the dispute process, through finding those errors, but how do we also add good payment history to the report, right? How do we add positive information to the report? How do we influence this amounts owed category? And amounts owed, another word for it is utilization. Utilization is looking at your balances versus your credit limits. It's very heavily focused on credit cards. Now, where your loans impact this category is if you owe more than your original loan balance. So that's when you're going to see a score drop in that category. And I'll give you a great example of when that can happen, or the primary time that we see it happen is with student loans. Let's say you were in college and while you're in school, those student loans are accumulating interest, and then you graduate and all of a sudden all that interest is smacked onto that student loan. And now because of that interest, you owe more than the original loan balance you took out. So for someone in that scenario, they may see a drop in their credit score because now they're impacting negatively that amounts owed category or utilization category. Another way to look at it is, what if you're not impacting this category? What if you have no loans? What if you have no credit cards? Now you're not necessarily seeing a point drop, you're just not getting the benefit of the category, right? So the AI may say, hey, you have no impact to this category. It's going to make sense for you to open a credit card, and here's what credit card you should open, or what type of credit card you should open. Length of credit history. This is looking at your average age of open accounts on your credit report. So I think that's a really important factor. If you have a bunch of history, but all of the accounts are closed, they're no longer going to positively impact your credit score. They're just not going to impact your score anymore. Credit score algorithm is meant to predict risk, right? What's your likelihood you're going to be able to pay a type of debt on time? Well, if there's no new history for that account, it's no longer going to influence the score. That's just the way the algorithm is structured. So if you have a credit card that hasn't been used, let's say for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, the AI and Credit Score Pro is going to say, hey, that credit card hasn't been used. We need you to make a purchase of X amount of dollars so that that credit card becomes active on your credit report, and you will see a benefit to your credit score from that and a boost in the score. New credit is really just looking at your inquiries and new accounts opened. New accounts mean risk. So once you have a payment or two, you're going to see a bump up in your score. And if you have too many inquiries, you may see a small drop in your score. So that's another factor it's going to help you manage. And then types of credit used is really just looking at, do you have a history of having loans, credit cards? What's that mix of the types of credit? Are you responsible in paying credit cards and also responsible in paying loans and mortgages, etc.? So essentially, we want to make sure that the AI is not just looking at removing the negative accounts, but looking at, okay, how do we optimize all of this? So it's going to read your credit report and determine, okay, you've got all these great accounts, but how do we get more points out of these accounts? And where are you not influencing the algorithm? Are you missing things like utilization ratio? Are you missing things like credit mix? Do you only have a history of using credit cards, but no loan history? And how is that impacting your score? And then to really wrap it all up nice with a bow, it's going to say, well, all of this is great and all, but what are your financial goals? Are you trying to get a car in the near term? Are you trying to prepare for buying a house? Because there are multiple different types of credit scores, and your goal matters. So if you say, hey, my next financial goal is to buy a house, the AI is going to read your credit report and say, okay, if you want to buy a house, these are the factors that are most influential to the credit score your mortgage lender is using when they qualify you. Or if your goal is to get a car, it's going to look at that differently. You can even just pick the goal of just general credit health. That's fine too. It's not going to narrow its scope so much to focus on one specific goal. So this is what it looks like in the system. You essentially just pick your goal. Pretty simple, right? And we'll keep adding to this as we get recommendations from users that they'd like to see other goals input in here. But essentially, when it comes to your credit score, you have multiple versions of that. Think of it like the iPhone. There was the first generation, and now what generation are we on? So each generation's a little bit different. It's the same with your credit scores. They're all looking at this percentage of information, but the way that algorithm is interpreting that information is different. For example, with some algorithms, with some new generations of credit scores, late payment history or negative history that's more than 2 years old hurts your score less than with older models. With older models, it doesn't matter if it's 2 years old, 1 year old, or 5 years old. It's going to have the same negative point hit on your score. Newer models aren't that way. So when you're picking that credit goal, it matters because then the AI is saying, okay, this algorithm is harder on your negative credit history than this algorithm. So we need to take these actions differently. Hopefully that all makes sense. So after you pick your goal, you are provided with an action plan. And this is what the action plan looks like. So I chose to show you this action plan. This person's scores, as you see, are 832, 795, 825. They're great credit scores, right? They're really high scores. But the AI still finds opportunity for score increases. You know, they have a higher score, so that point to value increases less. But no matter where you are, the AI is going to be able to identify what opportunities exist to create score boosts for you. And then what it's going to do is identify what that goal is, right? So let's see if I can do my laser pointer here. So here, right here, you'll see, here's the goal. And then it's going to say the most impactful items to changing your credit score as action 1, and then action 2. And there's more pages on here. I just only fit so much on the screen. And then action 3 and action 4. And let's say you accomplish action 1. When you refresh your action plan, this is going to go away and the next most impactful items are going to show up. So it's really going to help you really check everything off the list step by step. And if you change your goal, then it's going to reprioritize what makes the most sense based on your new goal. And part of that is going to be credit building tools. So I had mentioned previously, it's going to look at what's not on your credit report as well. And that's where these credit building tools really come into play, right? If you're someone, let's bear with me as I go back and forth here, but if you're someone who perhaps doesn't have a blend of a whole bunch of different kinds of payment history, maybe you've never had a loan, those credit building tools, those credit building tools are going to be really impactful. Things like Credit Strong or Self, they offer what's called credit builder accounts. So these are savings accounts that report like loans. We don't want to create a situation where you are taking out just a massive amount of debt just for the sake of improving your credit score, right? That's very counterintuitive, right? So we wanted to make sure we integrated these tools and resources that already exist out there and tell you when does it make sense to utilize these opportunities and when does it not make sense. I'll give you an example. We had a client previously, we had recommended to utilize one credit builder account. There's lots of companies that have them. They're not all made equal. And he went out there and he got 5. Well, after the first one, there was no benefit to the credit score after that. So it wouldn't make sense to go out there and open 5 credit builder accounts if you're only going to see the benefit from one, right? So in having a tailored strategy from the AI, it's going to tell you how to optimize what actually is going to cause score increases. You may not necessarily need to do every single credit building tool that exists out there. It makes sense only to do what's most pertinent and what's going to cause the score boosts for you. So what about financial literacy, right? We, in the very beginning, looked at all of these financial literacy statistics. And we know there's a problem out there where we don't know the answers. We have a lot of questions and there's a lot of conflicting information all over the internet. So our goal is really to obviously provide those answers to the common questions that are out there, but also provide the answers to the questions you might not even be asking. We also wanted to take credit and take its complexity and make it simple. And then beyond that, give you the ability to feel like you're making educated decisions and feel more confident with the financial decisions you're making. And then hopefully the ideal would be you can now pass that on to your children. Until we catch up and we provide better education in the school system, it's really going to be down to parents educating their children when it comes to finances. So currently we have a heavy focus primarily on the credit side within the educational aspect or the credit coaching section of Credit Score Pro. So current sections, and we are continuing to add to this as we get feedback from users on what they want to learn more about. There will be more classes that are included in here. And then we have our lives we do, of course, every Thursday. And then our Facebook group is also going to drive a lot of the content that we're going to put in here for those who are using the platform. So we want to start off with why credit matters, understanding your rights when it comes to credit, understanding how those different algorithms work. So you're educated going into any financial situation, whether it's buying a home or a car or getting a personal loan, you understand the differences between those models and how you need to set yourself up financially to get the best product possible for you. And then we go into breaking down those credit score factors. So really diving deep into understanding how payment history works, how it influences your credit score, knowing what to do if you encounter financial hardship to insulate or protect your credit score. We go into how to read your credit report, right? We want to take out the mystery and the complexity of reading your credit report so you can look at it, you can understand it, you can interpret it. We go over a lot of the myths. There's so much misinformation on the internet, so we want to dispel that. And then look at just a whole bunch of different credit report examples so you can say, oh, I understand why this person's score is 580. I understand why this person's score is 780. And then lastly, how to reestablish credit or how to establish a credit score. So that section is really going to go hand in hand with your credit action plan. So credit action plan is going to give you a good amount of information, but this is going to give you the really detailed why behind everything. So this section is really great for people who want that detailed information and really want to learn. So the whole point is you don't have to hire an expert. So if you have ever worked with anyone in the credit repair space, it can be very expensive. It can be costly. It can be difficult to find someone to trust. And it can also just be difficult to find someone who has all the answers. Maybe they're really great at disputing, but they can't help you in understanding the rest, right? They can't necessarily help you in understanding how that algorithm works or advise you on how to build credit. Similarly, if you are working with someone at a bank or a mortgage lender, a financial expert, often they don't have all these answers that you're looking for either. So we want to make sure you don't have to hire an expert, you don't have to shell out a whole bunch of money, and you can still become empowered and have the resources, the tools, and the skills to change your life. So we say all of that, but I know it's all down to the numbers. So what are we actually seeing happen for users of Credit Score Pro? So the average user is seeing about 80% of negative items removed by the fourth round of disputes. That's huge. If you are someone who's ever worked on your own credit, you know it may take you a year or more to see similar results. The average user is seeing about in 4 to 6 months the same results they typically see in 1 to 2 years with a standard credit industry professional. So in 2023, we were able to see users remove over 1,158,000 in reported negative debts because of credit report errors. And users do receive confirmation directly from the credit bureaus on removals. That's super important. That means those the credit bureaus are essentially saying, yes, this is an error. We're acknowledging this is an error, and this is now removed from your credit report. So that's something you can keep for your records too. And we have reported higher confidence in making financial decisions from users as well. With that, I'm going to leave it open for Q&A if anybody has any questions. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll throw this up there too. You can feel free to check out Credit Score Pro at creditscorepro.ai. The AI itself is free. The only thing you pay for is accessing the credit report. So we do get charged for the credit report through credit monitoring. So we're partnered with Smart Credit on that. And we do offer all of the credit building tools on the website. So you're welcome to check out all the tools. Of course, we always are going to recommend using the AI to determine what tools make the most sense for you. But we do have a ton of tools up there for free for you as well. And then feel free to join the Facebook group. It's on the screen. We do these events every Thursday, different topics every week. But what questions do you have? And I'm happy to dive into them, whether they're focused on the AI or just credit in general. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to read this one. Any tips for a foreign student who has recently moved to the US on how to build a good credit score? Do you have ITIN or SSN? That would be my first question. And then and I'll answer that in a second on the tips. And then also, is there any mechanism for transferring or sharing credit scores internationally? Unfortunately, there's no way to pull scores from another country to the US credit scoring system. The algorithms just don't function the same. Let me turn off this laser pointer. The algorithms just don't function the same. So unfortunately, no transfer, but what you can do if you have an ITIN, ITIN initially after SSN. Okay. So if you have an ITIN, there are certain institutions that will provide you with starter credit cards for ITIN. That would be my recommendation. Feel free to email me after this. I don't have my email on there. If you email us at info@mycreditscorepro.com and I'll put it in the chat, I can send you some of those resources as well as some of the credit building tools that are available for ITIN. One of my recommendations would be if you are renting right now, you can add your rent reporting on your credit report. You can add some of your bills onto your credit report as well, whether you're ITIN or SSN. So I would say just in general for someone who is trying to establish credit, a great place to start is getting your monthly bills added to your report and opening a credit card. I think that's like a great foundation. And then the last thing I would say to tie it all up nicely would be getting a credit builder account. So a savings account that reports like a loan. So there are some consolidated ways to do that really effectively. So let me put my email in the chat and I'm happy to send you that information. But otherwise, you can also utilize Credit Score Pro if you want to read your report. If you have anything open, and it'll say, hey, this is the most effective. If you have nothing, yeah, I'll send my email so you can use it. Any other questions? Quiet bunch today. I know we have a little bit smaller of a crowd, so that always creates a little bit less questions. Okay. I guess that is it for today. So let me go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing and let's talk about what maybe. Let me turn the laser pointer off again. There we go. I got there eventually. Let me take a look and see what our event is coming up. So what we have for our next event is, okay, so next week's event is for lenders, so how lenders use artificial intelligence. So that's looking at more than just Credit Score Pro. And then the event after that is navigating your credit report. So this is really going to be breaking down your credit report and helping you understand what's helping, what's hurting, understand how to read the credit report in general. It can be difficult. It's a whole bunch of information just in your face. So really helping you break that down, make sense of what you're seeing. And then we're going to dive into some myths as well at the end of reviewing the credit report. So that's what's coming up here on March 21st. If you want to see all of the upcoming events, we have them all posted right now through May on our Facebook. So it's just Credit Score Pro on Facebook. You can register there. But with that being said, I think we will conclude for today. And feel free to reach out info@mycreditscorepro.com if you have any direct questions. But otherwise, I hope to see you next time.